The 14th floor of Ashworth Capital Group, all glass, all mountain. Claire Ashworth stood at the head of the table and did not look at the view. A man walked in. Work boots, canvas jacket, tool roll under one arm. He moved to the corner where Edmund Ashworth's mahogany cabinet stood on a drop cloth and set his tools down without a word. "My father left a riddle in his will," Claire said. "Whoever solves it inherits everything. I'll give the whole company to the man in the corner." Laughter moved around the table. The man did not laugh. His eyes found the portrait above the cabinet, Edmund Ashworth at 55, oil on canvas, and he looked at it the way a person looks at something they were not supposed to find. Claire watched him. Her smile was gone before she understood why. The library on the 3rd floor had been Edmund's own. He had kept it for himself, shelves of first editions and ledgers going back to the company's founding year. A leather armchair worn down on the right armrest, where he always rested his elbow, and a globe in the corner that still showed the borders of countries that had not existed for 30 years. After his death 8 months ago, Claire had ordered the room sealed pending estate inventory. She had not returned. There was a version of grief that expressed itself as efficiency, and she had become fluent in it over the course of that autumn. Daniel Hargrove worked in the library on Tuesday morning, and again Thursday afternoon. He moved through Edmund's collection with a deliberateness that was not slowness. It was attention paid in full. Condition notes in a spiral pad, photographs for the insurance assessor, provenance cards, where the history could be established, and honest estimates where it could not. He had been doing this kind of work for 12 years and had understood early that objects told more reliable stories than people. Objects did not soften the truth for an audience. They simply held what had been given to them and kept it. Claire came in on Friday evening for a file she needed from the east wall cabinet. She had assumed the contractor would be long gone by 6. She had not accounted for a man who worked until the work was finished. Daniel was at the library table with a loupe and a brass candlestick. She stopped in the doorway. "How long does this actually take?" He set the loupe down. He did not look up immediately. "Depends what you're trying to find out." "I'm trying to find out what my father owned." "You know what he owned," Daniel said. "You're trying to find out what it's worth." He made a note in the pad. "Those aren't always the same project." Claire crossed to the cabinet and found her file. She was aware of him without watching him, the way you become aware of something in your peripheral vision that hasn't fully resolved into a category. She was almost out the door when he said, "There's a carved walnut box on the 2nd shelf. No maker's mark." She turned. "It isn't on your inventory list. I checked it against the estate paperwork your office sent over." She looked. The box was there, small, dark, 6 inches square, a symbol carved into the lid she did not recognize. She had walked past it a dozen times in this room over the past 8 months. "The wear pattern on the lid is centered," he said. "Someone opened it often. Always the same way, thumb here, 2 fingers at the right edge. Your father used this regularly. Whatever's inside mattered to him in a specific and consistent way." Claire looked at the box. She looked at the man who had noticed what she hadn't, still working at her father's library table at 6 in the evening. She picked up her file and left without saying anything. That night she searched. She ran the carved symbol through the estate document database. Nothing. She pulled Edmund's correspondence archive, the files transferred to secure storage after his death, and went through them backward from the month he died. She found a legal filing from 11 years ago, case number sealed, contents redacted, submitted to the county archive. In the margin, handwritten in Edmund's pen, 2 words, "Not yet." The filing had been submitted to the archive by Warren Ashworth. Claire had not been told it existed. She did not sleep well. Daniel came back Monday morning. Claire was waiting on the 3rd floor before he reached the elevator. "Can you open it?" she said. "The box." He looked at her coat still on, the way she was positioned. She had come up from the lobby. She had been watching for him. He did not comment on this. "Let me look at it first," he said. He set the box on the library table and examined it without touching the lid for several minutes. He studied the grain of the wood along the edges, the worn points, the depth of the carved symbol, the slight discoloration at 3 specific locations on the surface. Then he pressed those 3 locations in sequence below the symbol. The left edge, the back right corner. A soft click. The lid released. Inside, a sealed envelope, yellowed at the corners. A photograph on heavy black and white stock. A single sheet of paper, folded in thirds. Daniel unfolded the sheet. The handwriting was Edmund's. Claire recognized it without looking for the identifying marks, the wide downstroke on capital letters, the way each line angled upward at its close, as though the thought had lifted itself by the time it reached the period. My riddle is not a question. My riddle is a person. She picked up the photograph. A young man, early 20s, standing in front of a storefront on Lexington Avenue. The shop window behind him had hand-lettered text, Hargrove Antiques and Restoration. He was squinting into the sun and almost smiling, the expression of someone glad to be photographed, but embarrassed about being glad. She turned it over, a name in Edmund's hand, a date of birth. She looked up. Daniel was still reading the note. His face held the same composed attention it carried during work, but his left hand had changed. The fingers had curled inward against the paper's edge, not gripping, just resting there, the way a hand rests on a threshold when someone is deciding whether to go through. The room was very quiet. Through the window, Asheville ran downhill in its ordinary way, traffic moving on the bridge below, a courier on a bicycle, a woman waiting at a crosswalk with a coffee she had forgotten to drink. He set the note down. I was hired to open the box, he said. I know, Claire said. He began gathering his tools, rolling the cloth with the same deliberateness as everything. Do you know who your father was? She asked. He stopped. He turned around slowly, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked directly at her, not at the work, not at the object on the table between them, but at her face. He did not answer. The silence held itself for 4 seconds, maybe 5. Long enough to be something other than nothing. Then he walked out. She stood in the library with the photograph in her hand and the open box on the table, and understood that the joke she had made in the boardroom had not been a joke at all. Warren Ashworth called an emergency board meeting for Wednesday at 8 in the morning. He had heard about the box through Claire's assistant, a passing mention to Warren's secretary, the way most information moved through this building, through the gaps between conversations. By the time Warren walked in, he had already spoken privately with 3 board members the previous afternoon. Claire could read it in the greetings she received, too even, too careful, the neutrality of people who have already been positioned. Warren stood at the head of the table that was usually Claire's. Edmund's estate is not fully settled, he said. We have an outside contractor with unsupervised access to uncatalogued assets. I'm requesting a full inventory freeze until legal has reviewed everything. The contractor is a certified appraiser, Claire said. He was vetted through our own procurement office. That's not the point. Warren smiled, mouth only, the way he always had, the smile that went nowhere near his eyes and was not designed to. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the estate. I would think you of all people would want to protect that. The meeting dissolved without resolution. Afterward, in the hallway, Warren touched her elbow with the assumption of familiarity the gesture had never earned. What was in the box, Claire? Personal letters, she said. Nothing material to the estate. He watched her. Edmund was sentimental. He attached significance to things that had none. I'd hate for someone to be misled by something with no legal standing. She smiled. Of course, she said. Thank you, Warren. She drove to the county records office on her lunch break. The record she requested was sealed by court order, but the seal had expired 3 years ago. A supervisor located the physical file after 40 minutes of searching. The birth certificate was amended, a correction order from Buncombe County Family Court, 41 years old. Beneath the redaction bar, the original entry, Father, Edmund Robert Ashworth. The amendment left that line blank. The child's name, Daniel James Hargrove. His date of birth matched the date written on the back of the photograph. Claire sat in her car in the parking lot. The heater ran. Traffic moved on Patton Avenue. She watched a man across the street try to parallel park a truck that was slightly too long for the space, fail twice, give up, and drive on. She thought about the portrait in the boardroom and the specific quality of stillness in Daniel's body. When he had looked at it, the stillness of someone who recognizes something they were never meant to see. If Daniel Hargrove was Edmund's biological son, and the paperwork said he was, and the photograph said he was, and the note and the riddle and the sealed box all said he was, then the inheritance Claire had been given, the company, the name, in the 8 months of work she had put into holding the thing together, all of it existed under a prior claim she had not known about. And Warren had filed the suppression order. Warren had always known. She drove back to the building and went straight to her desk. and sat for 22 minutes without opening her email. She spent the time thinking about what it means to be handed something that was never yours to keep, and what kind of person knows that and says nothing, and what kind of person the silence makes them. The shop on Lexington Avenue was narrow and deep, the kind of storefront converted by someone with more patience than capital. The front window held a painted rocking chair, a copper weather vane, and a spinning wheel restored so carefully it looked like it had always been that shade of walnut. Lily Hargrove opened the door before Claire knocked. She was 9, small for it, with her father's coloring and a measuring quality to her gaze that made Claire feel thoroughly and briefly assessed. "You're important, aren't you?" she said. It was not quite a question. "I work at a company," Claire said. "My dad says that's not the same thing." Lily stepped back to let her in. "He's in the back." The shop smelled of linseed oil and old wood, and the faint chemical edge of stripping solution. Every surface held something being returned to itself: a spinning top, a pair of wrought iron andirons, a mirror with a cracked frame being relined with fresh backing material. Each piece had a small handwritten tag: origin, estimated period, condition before treatment. The kind of record a person keeps not for anyone else but because they cannot help it, because the history of an object matters to them in a way that is past explaining and not worth trying. Claire sat in the only available chair, a Windsor back that proved sturdier than it looked, and waited. The shop was quiet in the way workshops are quiet, not empty, but occupied with something ongoing. Lily appeared in the doorway between the shop and the back room. "Dad, the important lady is here." Daniel came out wiping his hands on a shop cloth. He looked at Claire in his Windsor chair with her leather bag on her knee. He did not look surprised. "I'll walk Lily to school," he said. Lily received this the way a child receives a thing she expected but hoped otherwise. She put on her backpack, kissed her father's shoulder — she had to reach up to do it — and went out the front door without being told. The shop was quieter without her. Claire took the envelope from her bag and set it on the work table between them. She did not explain it. She just set it there. Daniel looked at it for a moment. He picked up a tube of wood filler from the bench, pressed the cap on, set it back down again. Then he went to the back room and returned with 2 mugs of coffee. He set one in front of Claire without asking. He sat on the stool across the table, opened the envelope, and read the document inside with the same focused stillness he brought to everything. When he finished, he placed it face down on the table. He put both hands around the coffee mug. The street outside was ordinary. A delivery truck idled at the corner. Down the block, a dog barked twice and stopped, and the quiet returned. Eventually, Daniel raised his head. His eyes were reddened at the rims, not from crying but from the sustained effort of not doing it. He looked toward the front window, at the rocking chair and the weather vane in the street beyond, at the ordinary Asheville morning going about its business. Claire looked at the work table, at the tools arranged in sequence of use, at the mirror in the corner with its tag in his handwriting: walnut frame, circa 1890, restored. At the things he spent his days returning to what they had originally been, carefully, without announcement, in a shop on Lexington Avenue that smelled of oil and old wood. She did not say anything. Some moments required only another person being present in the room, willing to stay. The board meeting was called for 2 in the afternoon, and Warren had sent individual messages to every member that morning. Claire arrived to find him already positioned at the table's center, with 2 attorneys from the estate firm at either side, a deliberate arrangement designed to send its message before anyone spoke. He did not wait for the full room. "Edmund's will contains a supplementary codicil," he said, sliding a document to each board member with the efficiency of someone who has rehearsed the motion. The estate firm identified it during a secondary review. The codicil stipulates that Claire's appointment as CEO is contingent on the absence of any direct biological heir presenting a claim within 12 months of Edmund's death. He checked his watch with deliberate precision. "We have 4 weeks remaining in that window." 12 people looked at Claire with the careful expressions of those who have already been briefed and are deciding how visible to make it. "Of course," Warren continued, "if no such heir appears, and there's no reason to expect one, everything resolves cleanly. Claire's position remains secure. We simply need to honor the full scope of Edmund's intentions." He spread his hands. "This is about doing right by him." Warren did not look at Claire when he said it. He looked at the board members on either side of the table, working his way around the room with the measured even-handedness of someone who has done this before, built a consensus before the vote, positioned himself as the reasonable one, left the other person holding the appearance of self-interest. He had been doing this for 40 years. He was very good at it. The meeting produced no resolution. It was not designed to. Back in her office, Claire sat at the window and watched the afternoon move through Asheville. Below, the city went about its business foot traffic on Lexington, the lunch crowd thinning from the restaurants on Walnut Street, a delivery van making its route. She had run this company for 8 months. She had restructured 2 divisions, closed a fund that was bleeding the portfolio, hired 31 people doing work Edmund would have recognized as his. She had done every bit of it because Edmund had chosen her, had raised her, had given her his name, had placed his faith in her competence before she had found it in herself. And Warren had known, for the full length of Daniel Hargrove's life, that someone with a prior and irrefutable claim existed and had filed a court order to bury that knowledge, and sat across from her in this building for 8 months and said nothing, watching, waiting, maintaining the arrangement that suited him. She thought about what it takes to hold a silence like that for 40 years. She thought about what it does to a person, holding it, what it requires you to become. She picked up her phone. Daniel answered on the 3rd ring. "Are you free tonight?" she said. "I need to talk, not about the company." A pause. The faint sound of something being set down in the shop. A floorboard. "Lily's in bed by 9, he said. It was 9:15 when she turned off Merrimont Avenue and found the House Craftsman bungalow, porch light on, the maple in the front yard dropping leaves with no particular urgency. She knocked. He opened the door without the chain, which told her he had been listening for her car. The back porch ran the width of the house. He had put 2 chairs out, and the coffee was already made. Through the kitchen window, a lamp burned warm above the counter. She could see the edge of a drawing fixed to the refrigerator and a row of mismatched mugs on the shelf above the sink, each one a different size and color, and the kind of collection that accumulates over years without anyone deciding to collect it. Claire told him about the codicil plainly, without interpretation, the way you give someone a fact when you want them to have it before they have your opinion of it. Daniel listened without interrupting. He had a particular quality of listening that did not fill the spaces or push ahead of the story. He simply held the room open until she was finished. When she was, he said, "Did you come here to tell me? Or to ask what I'll do?" The coffee was cooling in her hands. The maple in the backyard shifted in the dark. 2 streets over, a car alarm started and stopped. She was still deciding how to answer when her phone rang. She did not recognize the number, but late calls were wrong numbers or emergencies. She answered. "This is Ruth McAllen." The voice was slow and deliberate, each word placed as though chosen in advance. "I worked for Edmund Ashworth for 35 years. I'm calling from Mission Hospital. There are things that need to be said before I can no longer say them." Claire looked at Daniel. He had heard the name. She could see it in the way he went. Still, the stillness of someone who has been waiting without knowing it. She put the phone on speaker. Ruth spoke without hurrying. She had been the one Edmund trusted with the arrangement from the beginning, the payments to Daniel's mother through a layered trust account, the suppression of the birth record, the monthly accounting that moved through 3 separate bookkeeping channels so it could not be traced easily. She had done it because Edmund asked, and because she had believed him when he said there was no other way, and because she had spent 35 years believing Edmund Ashworth when he told her something was necessary. "Warren threatened her," Ruth said, Daniel's mother. "He told Edmund that if Edmund ever acknowledged the boy publicly or privately, in any way that left a record, he would destroy her, her career, her family, everything she had built." Edmund believed him. Warren was capable of it in those years, and he knew it, and so he paid instead. Every month for 30 years, he kept track of Daniel's whole life from a distance, the shop on Lexington, the little girl, the kind of man Daniel had become. Her voice thinned slightly as she continued. "The riddle in the will. Edmund designed it so that Daniel would be the one called to the building, the one who would find the box. He arranged the appraisal contract through 3 different intermediaries over 6 years so that Warren could not trace it back. He built a path that only one person could walk. The box was for Daniel. The whole room was set out for Daniel." A pause. A breath. He waited 30 years for his son to come home. He simply could not be the one to open the door. A cough. then quiet. Then her voice again, softer. "There is evidence. Edmund sent everything to a notary in Black Mountain. A man named Garrett. Warren does not know about Garrett. Edmund made certain of that." The call ended. Daniel's hand rested on the armrest of his chair. It was trembling small, involuntary, just visible in the light that fell from the kitchen window. Claire saw it. Without thinking about it, without deciding to, she put her hand over his. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Somewhere inside the house, a clock marked the half-hour. The kitchen light stayed on and warm, and the maple dropped another leaf. They left Asheville before 7. The drive to Black Mountain took 23 minutes on the interstate and moved through country that shifted from suburban to wooded to mountain-faced in a few miles. Claire drove. Daniel sat in the passenger seat with the folder on his knee. The morning was cold and clear, and they did not talk much, which did not feel like avoidance. It felt like two people who had said what needed saying the night before and were not in the habit of filling silence for its own sake. Lily was with Mrs. Holt, the retired schoolteacher 2 doors down who made buckwheat pancakes on request and asked adults no inconvenient questions. Daniel had told her he had an errand. Mrs. Holt had said she would be there when Lily woke up. That was the whole conversation. And it was enough. The notary's office sat on a side street just off State Street, in a brick building shared with a dentist and a framing shop. The hours posted on the door were no longer current. Frank Garrett had moved to appointment only after his wife's illness. He was expecting them. Ruth had called him the previous night from her hospital room before she called Claire. Garrett was 71, reading glasses on a cord around his neck, and he spoke with the measured quality of someone who has kept a thing in careful custody for a long time and feels the quiet relief of being authorized to release it. "Edmund brought me the envelope in March, 6 years ago," he said. It sat on the table in front of him, still sealed, the Ashworth crest pressed into the wax beside a handwritten date. "He told me to hold it until someone came with a specific biological profile." He indicated a smaller envelope beside the larger one. "He provided a reference sample from a personal item. He didn't tell me what the item was. He asked me to have a comparison run before I released anything." "Your security badge from the Ashworth building," Garrett continued. "The system uses an adhesive-backed badge. The backing retains trace material. Your badge was registered to the access system the first morning you entered the building. I sent it to the lab Edmund had prearranged." He folded his hands on the table. It matched the reference sample. "I have been expecting you since the second week of your appraisal contract." The large envelope held 4 documents. The original birth certificate unredacted, Edmund's name on the line for father, written by a county clerk 41 years ago. A handwritten letter in Edmund's hand, 11 pages of cream stationery, addressed to Times Daniel, if you are reading this. A complete, notarized, witnessed, will executed before 2 attorneys, dated 14 months before the document Warren had produced at the board table. And an affidavit, signed and notarized, in which Edmund stated that any subsequent modifications to his testamentary documents had been executed under duress and should be considered without legal force. The drive back was quiet in a different way than the drive out. Claire kept her eyes on the road. After a while she said, "I didn't know. I need you to know that." Daniel looked at the valley spreading below the mountain on his side, farms and woodlines, and a river catching the morning light. "I know," he said. They did not speak again until they crossed back into Asheville. When Claire turned onto the street approaching the building, Warren was standing at the main entrance with 2 attorneys from the estate firm. He watched them pull into the lot. He watched them get out of the car together. Daniel, with the folder under his arm. His face did not change, but he understood everything. The board met at noon. Warren opened by framing Daniel as an individual presenting an unverified claim and calling for full legal review before any discussion of heirship. Claire let him finish. She stood and placed the documents on the table one at a time: the original will, the affidavit, the birth certificate, Garrett's signed chain of custody statement. She connected the laptop and the notary appeared on the screen, composed and ready. From a second connection, Ruth McCallan's written statement was read aloud by the nurse seated beside her hospital bed. Ruth's voice came through the speakers, thin but entirely clear, every word arriving intact. Warren said Daniel was an opportunist. He said the documents were suspect. He said Edmund would not have sanctioned any of this. He was measured, practiced, controlled, and Claire could hear, beneath the control, the sound of a man who has run the same argument so many times it has become automatic, who no longer thinks about whether it is true, only about whether it will work. Daniel had not spoken since they entered the room. He had been looking at the portrait above the side credenza, the same portrait, hung in every room of this building, the face that had watched over Claire's 8 months of work and over the 40 years before that, with the same quality of attention he had given it on the first morning he walked in. He was not looking at it the way a claimant looks at evidence. He was looking at it the way a person looks at a face they have spent their life trying to understand from the outside. Claire turned to face him. She looked at him the way you look at something you have been circling for a long time, and have finally allowed yourself to see directly. Edmund Ashworth solved his own riddle, she said, to the room and to him. The answer is standing in front of you. She looked at her chair, the chair she had held for 8 months. The chair Edmund had pointed her toward with his faith and his name, and the accumulated weight of everything he had built and believed about her. She stepped away from it. She stood to the side of it with her hands at her sides. The room went quiet in the specific way. Rooms go quiet when something has shifted and everyone present knows it. Warren's face moved through several things rapidly. He looked at the chair, then at Claire, then at Daniel. Daniel looked at the chair. He looked at Claire, standing apart from it. "I didn't come here for your chair," he said, quietly, without heat or performance. The way you say something when it is simply and completely true and requires nothing added to it. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was the kind that settles after a thing has been said that everyone in the room needed to hear, and none of them had known how to say. The board called a recess. Warren left with both attorneys. At the door, he turned and looked at Claire with the expression of a man who believes he is not finished with a matter. She held his gaze until he looked away first, then he was gone, and the room emptied quickly around them, and it was only Daniel and Claire at the window, with Asheville below and the mountains beyond. "What do you actually want?" Claire asked. She meant it as a starting point, a place to begin talking about what came next. He was quiet for a moment, not deciding whether to answer, but finding the words for something he had known for longer than this day. "My name in the right file," he said. "My daughter knowing who her great-grandfather was not as a legal fact, but as something she can hold on to when she's older and starts wondering where she comes from." He watched a construction crane swing slowly over the river district below. "I want to visit his grave without standing at the property line, without that feeling of being a stranger at your own history." He paused. "That's all I want. I just want to know where I came from and have it be something I'm allowed to know." Claire looked at him for a long moment. At the canvas jacket, the hands that had worked in the same shop for 12 years, and the particular quality of stillness, he brought into rooms the stillness of a man who had learned early that the work mattered more than the entrance. She thought about Edmund, about the 11 pages he had written in the cream stationery and sent to a notary in Black Mountain, about the 6 years the envelope had waited sealed in a brick building on State Street, about the intermediaries and the timing and the 3 separate bookkeeping channels, the accumulated care of a plan designed by a man who knew he would not be alive to see it carried out. All of that patience, all of that precision, all of it for one morning in a room like this one. "He left you a riddle," she said, "not a trap. He designed the whole thing so that you would be the one to choose not to inherit by default, but to find it, to walk in through the front door." She looked at her hands for a moment. He waited 30 years. He just couldn't wait in the same room. Daniel looked at her. Something in his face shifted, not a softening exactly, but a settling. The way a thing looks when it has found the right place. His phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his expression changed immediately and entirely, the specific softening that only one person's name on a screen can produce in a certain kind of parent. He answered, "Hey, Bug." A pause. He listened, and a slow smile crossed his face, the first she had seen from him that was completely unguarded. "Yes, I'll be home for dinner." Another pause. Longer. "Macaroni counts, Lily." "Yes, it counts as a complete dinner." He glanced up at Claire across the room, and she could hear through the phone, faint and clear, a 9-year-old girl mounting a detailed philosophical argument for why pasta alone did not constitute a nutritional unit, and what additional items would be required to elevate it. Claire looked away toward the window to keep from smiling. She did not quite manage it. 3 weeks later, The Ashworth Capital Group Board of Directors held its formal recognition hearing. Warren Ashworth had submitted his resignation 11 days prior, a plain white envelope left on the conference room table on a Monday morning, a single handwritten sentence inside acknowledging the conflict of interest and releasing all claims. No statement, no forwarding address. The board voted unanimously. Daniel James Hargrove was recognized as Edmund Ashworth's sole biological heir and primary testamentary beneficiary under the authenticated will. By agreement, one Daniel had proposed in writing, which Claire had accepted without modification. Daniel would hold 51% of voting shares and be named to the trust. He would not join the company operationally. Claire Ashworth would continue as CEO under a new 5-year contract executed by Daniel on behalf of the trust. He signed it with the same pen he used to tag the pieces in his shop. Ruth McAllen passed away 10 days after the hearing. She had been connected by phone for the vote, and the nurse who called Daniel said she had been composed. She had asked them to open the window. He drove to the hospital the afternoon before she died. She was awake. She held his hand with both of hers and said, "He was sorry. Every day of those 30 years, he carried it. I want you to know that." She looked at him carefully. "I know it isn't enough." "It is enough," Daniel said. She closed her eyes. He stayed until the light changed. The family cemetery sat on a hillside east of the city, inside an old grove of oaks Edmund had preserved when he sold the surrounding land 30 years before. The stones were granite and plain names, dates, and nothing else. No verse, no epitaph, just the fact. It was a Thursday in late October. The oaks had gone copper and amber, and the air held the sweetness of leaves beginning their return to what they came from. Daniel stood before the stone. He had been there long enough to have said whatever needed saying, or to have decided that words were not the right instrument for this particular silence. He heard footsteps on the path behind him. He recognized the sound without turning the specific pace, the slight hesitation on the uneven ground. He had heard it in a library, in a hallway, on a back porch in the dark. Claire stopped a few feet behind him. She had not been invited. She had found herself driving in this direction and decided to trust that, which was not something she usually did with impulses. She came anyway. She stood quietly. She did not offer words or explanation. She looked at the stone and at the oaks and at the valley below, and she did not try to make the moment into anything other than what it was. Between the two of them, Lily stood. She had found a wildflower on the way up the hill, something small and late blooming, yellow with a dark center. She held it with both hands. The way she held things she had decided mattered. The wind moved through the oaks. A leaf let go. Lily walked to the stone and placed the flower at its base. She stepped back and seemed satisfied. Daniel looked at Claire. She was still looking at the stone. Her profile against the copper trees, the stillness of someone who has set something down and does not yet know what she will carry instead. He said nothing. He looked back at the stone. When they turned to go, not by agreement, but at the same moment the way people turn when they have been somewhere long enough, Lily reached up and took her father's hand on the left side. On the right side, without looking up to see if it was wanted, she took Claire's hand. The three of them walked down the hill. Neither of them had been looking. That was the only reason they could trust that it was real.